The world was shaken this week by a dramatic and controversial event in the Mediterranean Sea. Two humanitarian aid boats, loaded with supplies and hope, were on a mission to reach the besieged people of Gaza. Their journey, however, was violently interrupted near the coast of Tunisia. Reports quickly surfaced that these vessels, part of a larger international flotilla, were attacked by drones, an act that has sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles and ignited fierce debate across the globe. The attack, which occurred just miles from the Tunisian shore, has raised urgent questions about the lengths to which governments will go to enforce blockades, and the risks faced by those who dare to challenge them. According to multiple sources, the operation was not a rogue act, but was reportedly ordered by none other than Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu himself. This revelation has only intensified the controversy, as Netanyahu's government has long maintained a hardline stance on Gaza, citing security concerns. Yet, the decision to use military force against civilian aid vessels has drawn condemnation from human rights organizations, legal experts, and even some of Israel's traditional allies. Netanyahu, for his part, has defended the action as necessary to prevent what he describes as provocations and potential threats to Israeli security. But critics argue that this was a disproportionate use of force and a dangerous escalation in an already volatile region. Let's break down exactly what happened, why it matters, and what it could mean for the future of humanitarian efforts in conflict zones. The attack on the aid boats is not just a headline, it's a flashpoint in a much larger struggle over access, accountability, and the rights of civilians in times of war. As the world watches, the details of this incident are being scrutinized by governments, activists, and ordinary people alike. The story is complex, with layers of political, legal, and moral implications that demand careful examination. The events unfolded on September 8th and 9th, 2025. Two ships, one flying the Portuguese flag and the other British, were part of the global Sumud flotilla, a coalition of international activists determined to break the blockade of Gaza and deliver desperately needed aid. The flotilla had set sail from various European ports, carrying not only humanitarian supplies, but also a message of solidarity with the people of Gaza. As the ships anchored near Sidi Bou Said, a picturesque coastal town in Tunisia, they were suddenly targeted by unmanned aerial vehicles. The attack was swift and unexpected, catching the crew and passengers off guard. Eyewitnesses described the terrifying moment when drones appeared overhead, dropping incendiary devices and stun grenades onto the decks of the aid boats. According to investigative reports, the drones were launched from an Israeli submarine operating covertly in the Mediterranean. The use of incendiary materials set parts of the ships ablaze, while stun grenades created chaos and confusion among the activists on board. Miraculously, there were no fatalities, but several people suffered minor injuries and the ship sustained significant damage. The attack was clearly designed to disable the vessels and intimidate those involved, rather than to cause mass casualties. Still, the psychological impact on the activists was profound, and the incident has been widely condemned as an act of aggression against civilians. The global Sumud flotilla was no ordinary convoy. It was a diverse coalition of over 500 activists from around the world, including prominent figures such as climate activist Greta Thunberg. The participants represented a wide range of backgrounds: doctors, journalists, students, and human rights defenders, all united by a common goal: to challenge Israel's blockade of Gaza and deliver life-saving aid to its residents. The flotilla was meticulously organized, with each ship carrying medical supplies, food, and other essentials. The presence of high-profile activists brought international attention to the mission, and many hoped that their involvement would deter any violent response. Instead, the attack has only amplified the spotlight on the plight of Gaza and the risks faced by those who seek to help. In the aftermath of the attack, the Israeli government was quick to issue statements defending its actions. Officials claimed that the flotilla was not carrying genuine humanitarian cargo, but was instead a political provocation designed to undermine Israel's security. They argued that the blockade of Gaza is a necessary measure to prevent weapons and other contraband from reaching militant groups. The government's narrative was echoed by some media outlets, but has been fiercely contested by independent observers and the activists themselves. Critics point out that Israel has a long history of restricting aid to Gaza and accuse the government of using security concerns as a pretext to maintain control over the territory. Activists and human rights organizations have pushed back hard against the official Israeli narrative. They insist that the flotilla was carrying only medicine, food, and other humanitarian supplies, items desperately needed by the people of Gaza, who have endured years of blockade and conflict. Many of the activists have called the drone strike an unlawful attack on civilians and are demanding accountability from the Israeli government and its allies. Human rights groups have launched investigations, and some are calling for international sanctions in response to what they describe as a blatant violation of international law. The incident has also sparked protests in cities around the world, as supporters of the flotilla demand justice for those targeted in the attack. The legal implications of the attack are significant. Under international law, civilian vessels are protected from military attack, especially when they are engaged in humanitarian missions. Legal experts have pointed out that the use of force against the aid boats may constitute a violation of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, as well as other treaties governing the conduct of states in times of conflict. The fact that the attack took place in international waters, near the territory of a third country, adds another layer of complexity. Tunisia has lodged a formal protest, and several other governments have called for an independent investigation into the incident. The question now is whether those responsible will be held to account, or whether this will become yet another example of impunity in the ongoing conflict over Gaza. In the days since the attack, hundreds of activists from the flotilla have been detained by authorities, their fate uncertain. Some have been released after questioning, while others remain in custody, facing possible charges related to their participation in the mission. The incident has sparked a wave of global reactions, with governments, NGOs, and ordinary citizens expressing outrage and concern. News coverage has been intense, with many outlets highlighting the bravery of the activists and the dangers they faced. The story has also reignited debate over the ethics of humanitarian intervention and the responsibilities of states to protect civilians in conflict zones. International aid organizations are now scrambling to respond to the crisis. The Red Cross, United Nations agencies, and other humanitarian groups have called for safe passage for aid convoys and an immediate end to attacks on civilian vessels. Behind the scenes, diplomats are working to de-escalate tensions and ensure that future aid missions are not met with violence. The incident has also prompted renewed calls for a comprehensive review of the blockade policy, with some leaders urging Israel to allow more humanitarian access to Gaza. The fate of future aid missions hangs in the balance as activists weigh the risks of continuing their work in the face of such dangers. Meanwhile, the people of Gaza continue to suffer. Hospitals are running low on essential medicines, food supplies are dwindling, and the humanitarian situation grows more desperate by the day. For many residents, the flotilla represented a rare glimmer of hope, a chance to receive the aid they so desperately need. The attack on the aid boats has dashed those hopes, at least for now, and left many wondering whether the international community will step up to protect their rights. Local doctors and aid workers are doing their best to cope with the shortages, but the challenges are immense. The need for humanitarian assistance has never been greater, and the risks faced by those who try to deliver it have never been higher. This incident raises fundamental questions about the role of governments in controlling the flow of aid, and the responsibilities of the international community to protect those who risk everything to help others. How far will states go to enforce their policies, even at the expense of civilian lives? Who will stand up for the rights of activists and aid workers and ensure that humanitarian principles are upheld? These are not abstract questions. They are matters of life and death for millions of people caught in the crossfire of conflict and politics. As the world grapples with these issues, the need for accountability, transparency, and compassion has never been more urgent. We want to hear from you. What do you think about the attack on the Gaza-bound aid boats? Do you believe governments have the right to use force to enforce blockades, or should humanitarian missions be protected at all costs? Share your thoughts in the comments below and join the conversation. This story is far from over, and your voice matters. As new details emerge and the world continues to react, we'll be following the developments closely. Stay tuned for updates, and remember, the struggle for justice and human rights is a collective effort, and every opinion counts.